What could I possibly say about ReZero's third arc that hasn't already been said? Arc 3, which consists of episodes 12 through 25 of the first season, is some of the finest television I've ever watched. But if you're anything like me, every time you try to explain to your friends just how smart ReZero actually is, they look at you like you've lost your mind. This video is made for you, so that you know you're not crazy. I see you and I feel your pain. While I usually like to pick a select few topics to dissect, I'm mixing it up, as I'll be going through the entire arc, starting from Act 1. No, from 0. Sorry, I had to do it. Much of the discussion of ReZero, this arc in particular, is centered around the way it deconstructs and reconstructs the tropes of the isekai genre. I've covered that too, but that discourse has been done to death at this point, honestly, so this is different. Like my previous arc-by-arc analysis videos, I'll be looking at the invisible ink of the story, to use the phrase from Brian McDonald's book of the same name. Invisible ink is the writing below the surface of the words. Most people will never see or notice it, but they will feel it. I normally pull from many different sources, but I'll mostly be sticking with McDonald's book throughout this whole video, with a couple exceptions, because I think it's best for my purposes here. First, I'll outline what this arc is trying to accomplish thematically. Then, I'll analyze each act in the 3-act story structure to show how it hits all the right beats to convey its message. ReZero's third arc is perfectly written, and this is why. The Armature. To start, we need to identify what this arc is even about, so we can see the many ways it effectively delivers that message to the audience. Everyone has a different way to express it, but Brian McDonald refers to the meaning of a story as the armature. He writes, "The armature is the idea upon which we hang our story. It is what you want to say with your piece." The word theme is often used in very unspecific ways, and a single story can have multiple themes, as this arc does. But the term armature identifies a central underlying theme, and it makes it clear that the entire story is built on top of it. Here's what I came up with for Arc 3's armature. In order to mature, you must look beyond yourself and be mindful of others' feelings and perspectives. In this arc, Subaru has to learn to see past the initial assumptions and expectations he built up for others in his head, due to his own insecurities. Love is the primary area of focus for how this is explored, but far from the only one. The arc dramatizes the armature in several ways to get an emotional impact, and characters will often spell it out to Subaru directly. Everything in the story is designed on top of that armature. And once you notice all the details that reinforce that, both big and small, you really appreciate how solid the writing in this arc is. For instance, Subaru starts the story in his own head and out of touch with others' perspectives. And guess what? To show he's changed by the end, the story has him literally share perspectives with Julius via his next spell. It's brilliant. It's all very obvious when you realize it, and that's a good thing. This helps ReZero resonate so much. It actually has something to say, and it articulates it with impressive clarity. With that in mind, now I can break down the arc act by act, to highlight how structurally sound it is, and to show all the ways it's written on top of that armature. Act 1. Before the arc can reach the emotional depths of The Outside of Madness, there's some important setup that needs to be done. As McDonald explains, Act 1 tells the audience everything they need to know to understand the story that is to follow. The first act of Arc 3 does exactly this, even if you didn't realize it. The arc begins with Subaru having fun with the villagers a couple months after the last arc, when he helped save them from the mob beast's attack. He's in a place of stability and contentment. Except that almost immediately gets undercut when he starts reflecting on his actions in the last arc, ending with the line, "Wait, did I even do anything at all?" It's disguised as a silly joke, but it tells us he's discontent with his own abilities. We're less than a minute in, and it already established the key to all of Subaru's decisions throughout the rest of the story. He's insecure. Following that, he feels excluded when Amelia meets with Ferris without him. Instead of respecting her boundaries, he sneakily tries to get information from Wilhelm about the discussion. Then he manages to talk himself into tagging along with her to the capital, despite her reluctance. Subaru disregards Amelia's feelings and involves himself in her affairs because, as was established just moments ago, he feels useless, and he doesn't want to feel useless. Look at that! We've seen exactly what's going to happen later, just on a smaller scale. Subaru's true motivation is clearly displayed in these early interactions. As we enter the capital, we get many moments where Subaru is depicted in a childlike way, falling out of the dragon carriage, having Amelia hold his hand to guide him, that sort of stuff. This is why I specifically mentioned maturity when identifying the Armature. We're shown his childish portrayal here in the beginning, and we'll see how that changes by the end. There's a few small moments I want to bring up before we get to the main event. First, Subaru tries to save Priscilla from thugs as if she were a damsel in distress, much to her repugnance. Then there's Subaru's reaction to Ferris being male, where he asks what even the point is of him looking like that if he's a guy. Ferris directly calls him out on this too, noting that it was Subaru who had the wrong idea. Here he is building up assumptions about people in his head and getting disappointed when they don't match what he wanted and/or expected. We'll see this to a much larger degree later. Remember, everything is designed on top of that armature, so even funny little interactions like these that seem inconsequential serve to reinforce the message. Even though Amelia explicitly tells him to stay back, he goes against her wishes and enters the ceremony, where he stands up in alleged defense of her and declares himself her knight. Some viewers couldn't bear to stand the cringe here, but I think that shows what an amazing scene it is, perfectly illustrating how Subaru prioritizing his own ego, his own desire to feel wanted and useful, negatively affects the people around him. You're supposed to be facepalming at his embarrassing, self-serving performance. There's a really interesting parallel here between Subaru and Reinhard. At the beginning of the ceremony, Felt arrives and lashes out at Reinhard. Reinhard assumes it's about her dress, and not the fact that he pretty much kidnapped her and made her participate in the royal selection without her say. Neither Reinhard nor Subaru are respecting the wishes of the women they're supposed to be serving. What they think is good for her is at odds with what she actually wants, and they're oblivious to it. Even aside from showing Subaru's egocentrism, the whole ceremony is very good at establishing the conflict of the arc. The witch cult may be the physical forces of antagonism that create the life or death stakes, but Subaru's story in this arc is all about maneuvering through the tense political landscape with the figures established here. Krush proudly proclaims her isolationist, individualist stance. Anastasia shows herself to be extremely capitalistic. Subaru later experiences these characteristics of them firsthand when trying to get their assistance, and is blindsided by them, despite their perspectives being telegraphed so plainly here. If only he was mindful enough at the time to pick up on that. Subaru accepts a duel with Julius and gets his ass handed to him. In his very first interaction with Julius, Subaru gets offended on Amelia's behalf when Julius kisses her hand, despite the fact that she's not bothered by it at all. This is all about him and his feelings, not actually defending her. He hates Julius because it reminds him that, deep down, he feels like he's not worthy to be by Amelia's side. So when Julius outright says this at the end of their duel, that's the real final blow. The ensuing argument between Amelia and Subaru is still, to this day, one of my favorite moments in the entire series. The real nasty side of Subaru's performative, self-sacrificial nature and possessiveness shows its ugly face here. Look at how Subaru's face contorts in anger and makes him look insane and frightening. You could easily point out who's wrong here even if you were to watch the argument with the sound off. Subaru claims that he did everything he did for her sake, which she sees right through, but he refuses to accept that as the truth. He has a constant need to prove himself by saving and protecting others, since that's where he's been able to derive some feelings of self-worth, as we just saw in the previous arcs. It doesn't really matter if the person he's saving really wants that or not. I just want to call specific attention to this line here, where Subaru says, "You don't even realize how the things you've done for me have saved me." We're going to see a way that line comes back in the third act, so remember it. Another crucial part is when Amelia remarks, "The version of me that lives within your head must be amazing." She correctly points out that Subaru isn't treating her as she actually is, but an idealized version of her that he's constructed for himself. His real concern isn't her feelings or perspective, but his own image of her, one that validates his sense of worth. Amelia throws her robe at Subaru and walks out, relieving him of his duty and leaving him all alone to stew in his negative thoughts. This is the curtain closing, signaling the end of the act. Subaru's position has irrevocably changed from what we saw in the beginning. And just as a good first act should, Arc 3's first act told us everything we needed to know about the story to follow. Act 2. Unless you're someone who couldn't bear to watch the show after Subaru's outburst, the second act is probably what kept you glued to your screen and desperate for more. In many stories, a meandering Act 2 after an explosive and captivating Act 1 is why people lose interest, but ReZero doesn't suffer from that problem. To understand why, let's go over what makes a strong second act. McDonald described the second act as the time to explore what happens as a result of your first act. Everything should be cause and effect. When Rem learns of an attack on the manor that puts everyone in danger, Subaru initially sees it as an opportunity to prove to Amelia that she needs his help. The goal is clear: save her and the others to restore his reputation. But he quickly finds out that he's powerless to act. Having severed himself from Amelia's side, he's unable to make it in time to save her life. Now, Subaru must navigate through tense social and political situations, made far more difficult with his tarnished reputation, in order to stop the mysterious witch cult and their assault. Just as McDonald pointed out, this is all cause and effect. Subaru's choices from Act 1 have removed him from Amelia's proximity, and ruin his reputation with the only people who can help him. Throughout his various attempts, Anastasia lectures him on bartering, saying he fails negotiations because he only thinks about himself. And Krush points out that in his tirade against the witch cult, he never once mentioned Amelia. They're both vocalizing the core idea of the Armature. Subaru still hasn't looked beyond himself. As a result, he's caught in a self-destructive cycle, literally. That's the narrative purpose Return by Death serves in this arc. His self-destructive tendencies are depicted even in small ways too. For example, Subaru's habit of biting his lip. It's an act of lashing out in anger, but it only hurts himself. He refuses to have it healed by another person. There's some great recurring imagery of Subaru freezing and shattering to pieces, which I think accomplishes two things at once. Firstly, showing him frozen reinforces this idea of him being stuck in time, powerless to move forward. Secondly, him breaking into pieces symbolizes his fragility, and what he later describes as the hollowness inside him. It's a really fantastic way to visually communicate both of these ideas. To reinforce the message of the arc, the main antagonist, the Sin Archbishop of Sloth, Betelgeuse, is written to be a clone of Subaru. As I brought up in the last arc, clones are characters in your story that represent what could, should, or might happen to your protagonist, if they take a particular path. Betelgeuse commits atrocities, all in the name of love for a half-elf without any consideration for her real feelings. He even circumvents death to continue that pursuit. Hey, I know a guy like that. Satella and Amelia are objects of desire that Betelgeuse and Subaru, respectively, have ascribed their own ideals onto. He's ultimately an exaggerated representation of what Subaru will become if he stays on the path that he's going down. The comparison between them is highlighted with how, right off the bat, Betelgeuse assumes Subaru is another member of the witch cult like himself, one representing the sin of pride. I wonder why. Later, while dying in the snow, Subaru maniacally laughs, just like Betelgeuse. There's a diegetic reason for this. Betelgeuse's spirit has taken over his body, we just don't know that yet. but it's also meant to show that Subaru is frighteningly close to becoming someone like him. What Subaru experiences in this act is a critical part of character development, what McDonald refers to as ritual pain. It is your job as a storyteller to apply as much pressure on your characters as possible. You must back them into a corner and force them to change. Make it as painful as you can. Your protagonist will be measured by the size of their struggle, so don't pull any punches. ReZero certainly doesn't pull any punches. Or kicks. There aren't many mainstream stories out there that commit to this principle as much as this one. It's the ritual pain that Subaru undergoes in this act that genuinely surprised me, and it told me the series was interested in mining much more from its premise than I initially expected. But there's another important aspect to this pain. It's not just random, disconnected brutality. It's personal. As McDonald states, characters must confront the very thing they would least like to, and confronting this thing is a kind of hell. More precisely, it is their own personal hell. But through this confrontation, they are transformed. For an impulsive, close-minded character, being forced into a situation where they have to be mindful of the nuance and intentions of others is its own kind of hell. But more saliently, Subaru derives self-worth from saving others, so his personal hell is that he's unable to save the ones he loves from dying over and over again. Subaru is forced to confront his worst fears about himself, that he has nothing of value despite all of his posturing. It's that personal element that makes his ritual pain so much more impactful. That brings us to the lowest point in the story, or to use a term from Blake Snyder's Save the Cat, the all is lost moment. It seems like a total defeat. All aspects of the hero's life are in shambles. At the all is lost moment, stick in something, anything that involves a death. Now, it may seem like all was already lost for Subaru, including many deaths. But no, it gets worse. He actually does get to Amelia before the final loop, but he still hasn't learned his lesson. Notice how he's depicted forcefully grabbing her, trying to get her to comply at the expense of her feelings. Just be quiet and do as I say, he tells her. Then, after trying to tell her about return by death, Amelia dies in his arms. For the next few minutes, we watch Subaru weep over her corpse as the sky turns a dismal red. This death is different. Prior, all of Amelia's deaths occurred off-screen. Here, not only did he witness it, but he's culpable. Both Subaru and the audience are filled with a sense of true hopelessness. It really does feel like this was the final straw. After resetting, Subaru breaks down and attempts to convince Rem to run away with him, which brings us to another critical beat of Act 2. Borrowing another term from Snyder, this is the dark night of the soul. It's the point, as the name suggests, that is the darkness right before the dawn. It is the point just before the hero reaches way deep down and pulls out that last, best idea that will save himself and everyone around him. But at the moment, that idea is nowhere in sight. In what cemented itself as one of the standout moments for the series, the subtext of Subaru's insecurities finally boils over to the surface, and he confesses to Rem that he hates himself. Before this, his outbursts were about blaming everyone else, but in this one, Subaru accepts that the fault lies with him. This is a really great Dark Night of the Soul moment because you truly are on the same page as him. When I reached this scene for the first time, even full well knowing we were at this beat and what would likely come next, I still felt like he had no other options and fully understood why he would give up and run away. I was left wondering, is this the point of the story? A cautionary tale that ends in failure? Has he learned his lesson too late? But, as Snyder says, this is the darkness before the dawn, so Rem's rebuttal reminds him of all of his positive qualities too. His kindness, his persistence, and the genuine good he's done for others like herself. What's very important here is that Subaru was ignorant of the full extent of Rem's feelings for and about him. Like I said, that idea from the Armature is present everywhere. Together, they reach a new understanding, and I don't think I need to summarize this part. You already watched them talk about it for like 22 minutes. It's probably one of your favorite episodes. With a newfound sense of demonic inspiration, they make a plan and decide to act on it. And that leads us to the final act. Act 3. Everyone understands that the third act brings us to the climax, the most exciting part of the story and the culmination of everything that came before it. But a climax has a much bigger job. Simply put, the climax of a story puts the protagonist in an intense situation that forces a choice that shows growth or lack of growth. I was surprised to learn that the season's ending garnered some lukewarm reactions at the time that it didn't stick the landing. Something I couldn't disagree with more. Arc 3's climax is chock full of decisions that showcase Subaru's growth. Here in the third act, Subaru puts into practice the lessons he's learned by rallying Krush and Anastasia, launching an organized campaign against both the White Whale and the Witch Cult. Through his negotiations uniting these parties to take on the Whale, we see that he's become far more perceptive to the interests of others and not just himself. The ensuing battle taps into this as well by giving Wilhelm a personal connection to the Whale. This allows Subaru to experience how his actions have a profound impact on other people, in this case, in a positive way too. Also, Wilhelm's backstory involves him continually pushing off his wife's feelings until it's too late. Not to sound like a broken record, but it's the Armature. It's always back to the Armature. Later, Subaru's counterattack against Betelgeuse demonstrates his newly defined selflessness and a greater awareness and respect for Amelia's feelings. I did already bring it up earlier, but Julius and Subaru share senses and see from a collective vision in their battle against Betelgeuse. It's probably the most perfect dramatization of the Armature you could do, and it shows how intertwined these two have become. Julius and Subaru are what McDonald refers to as flip-flops, characters who are opposites but exchange character traits. They started off as diametrically opposed rivals, even if that rivalry was far more one-sided, but in the third act, they're presented as considerably more alike than they were before. We see Subaru respected by his peers and commanding troops, calling back to the way Julius was depicted in Act 1. Which used to be in stark contrast to Subaru. The series also literalizes this idea that Julius has had an impact on him by having him impart his spirit onto Subaru. A part of Julius is now with Subaru, and that's what helps him overcome Betelgeuse. On the flip side, when Julius is first introduced, he's shown as respected, knightly, and adherent to a strict code of conduct. Now, this part of the story where he acts as somewhat of an independent agent, an outsider without the limitations of reputation and a strict code, feels a lot more reminiscent of Subaru's role. He even acknowledges the flaws of the institution we saw him adamantly defend, and he calls Subaru a friend. That's cute. We also reach a narrative beat McDonald calls the crucifixion. All characters of change have, at least, an emotional death that allows them to be resurrected anew. Subaru undergoes many deaths in this arc, but this one has additional meaning. When Betelgeuse takes over his body, Subaru begs Julius to kill him. He chooses death rather than becoming Betelgeuse. This works both literally and metaphorically. Remember, Betelgeuse is a representation of what Subaru could become if he continues down the wrong path. Subaru rejecting that possession is him rejecting that path. Betelgeuse keeps clinging on, refusing to give up on Satella even after she rejected him, echoing Subaru's own response to Amelia's earlier rejection. He even says, "I haven't forgotten a single moment of the things you did for me," a line that clearly mirrors Subaru's words to Amelia during his outburst at the end of Act 1. "I told you it was going to come back." But now, Subaru finally puts an end to him, and an end to that part of himself. God damn, I fucking love this show. When organizing the evacuation of Ardlam Village, Subaru uses Amelia's magic robe to hide his identity from her. He's presented the most selflessly we've ever seen him, knowing he won't get attention or credit for it. He's not doing this to prove his worth to Amelia the way he was before. When he jumps into the carriage to find the bomb, he doesn't even say anything. In the first act, Subaru was portrayed as childlike. Here in the final act, he's portrayed as mature and composed, a far cry from his earlier behavior. With that, we reach the denouement, which is as simple as Subaru and Amelia having a much-needed conversation. He tells her he wasn't really doing it all for her, he just liked the idea of doing it all for her. He also confesses his love to her, but crucially, without demanding anything in return. While up until the bitter end, Betelgeuse demanded the witch's love, Subaru now respects Amelia's feelings and says he doesn't mind giving Amelia the space she needs. By doing so, Subaru demonstrates that he has learned the lessons of the Armature. The events of the arc have left him a much more mature person, who's able to look beyond himself and be mindful of the feelings and perspectives of others. In the end, that's all this story is about. Conclusion. ReZero's third arc excellently conforms to the three-act structure to convey its central message. The first act highlights Subaru's motivations are based on an insecurity. The second act puts him through his own personal hell to make him confront that insecurity. And the third act is a great showcase for just how much he's grown from that experience. You'll notice that everything in the story is built on top of that armature if you pay close enough attention. It's very methodical and thoughtful in its execution, and even if you weren't thinking about every little detail, you certainly felt the effects. Arc 3 is something special, and rewatching it again and writing this analysis really reminded me of exactly why I fell in love with this series in the first place. I really appreciate everyone who's been watching and showing support. Let me know if you'd like to see an Arc 4 analysis, or if you're all burnt out on these types of videos. I can think of a couple things to talk about. I don't care what anyone says, I love Season 2, animation issues be damned. That's all for now though. Live strong, okay? It has come to my attention that less than 8% of you watching are subscribed, which I consider a violation of my rights. Viewing this far without liking and subscribing is incredibly rude, is it not? Have you no shame? I believe that one should be rewarded for their efforts, as any decent person would. Thankfully, I am a generous man, so I will give you the opportunity to correct this grave error right now. Thank you for your attention on this matter.